miss you all in the week. If I haven't made that clear ever before, I really miss you during the week. Oh, it's good to see some of you I don't see every week. I missed. I'm glad you're here. So in the Bible, we see that names are really important. Time and time again, we see that names mean something. Christine and I just got a rescue cat. Actually, Karen and Liz, I wasn't going to say this, but it just popped into my head. Karen and Liz rescued a cat, and it just happened to be in the timing that we were wanting a kitten, and thankfully their cat didn't like this kitten they rescued, so we got to have a cat.
Olivia wants a cat.
I'm sure Olivia wants a cat. We don't know yet, but I think it'll work out. But so Liz brought the cat for us to meet the cat. She was doing some work in the church, and the cat is like a little Houdini and escaped.
How old?
And 5 weeks old. It didn't just escape. 1.1 pounds. Does somebody else want to preach this? I'm like going by all the cues now. 1.1 pounds, and the cat beelines from over here to where that newly patched wall is, but the wall wasn't newly patched then. And I don't know how they're so good at finding the impossible places for us to get them, but the cat was hiding behind the shower pan in the wall for 2 days. Long story, just a teeny bit longer. Karen had the brilliant idea, I'll give her all the credit for, a live animal trap. Liz had to put rocks on the weight because 1.1 pounds wasn't going to do anything. But it worked. We came and we were so excited that the cat was out of the wall and we now had it. But we named it Heidi because that seemed really appropriate. It was very good hider. Names have meaning. But in the Bible, in the Hebrew scriptures, we see a lot, and in the Christian scriptures too, we see a lot that names have like special meaning. Even there were places names given to inanimate objects, sacred objects nonetheless, but inanimate, like altars. Like we see Jacob built an altar in Genesis 35 and called it El Bethel, or El Bethel, which means God's house. Makes sense. This is where God dwells, God's dwelling place. And then in Exodus 17, we see that Moses built one called Jehovah Nissi, which very specifically means God is our banner. And it was after a battle that was won, named it after God being over us. Then we see people with names. We see an angel came to Hagar and said, "You are to name this son Ishmael," which means the Lord sees your plight. It's to remind you that you are never out of the eyes of God. And Ishmael wasn't the only one that was divinely inspired, given angels. We know Jesus was, but there were others like Isaac and Solomon. There are others that even before they came to this earth, they were inspired with a name that meant something. And then we see there are times that God actually changes the name of people. I always think of Jacob being named Israel. The name changed from Jacob to Israel. I know Jacob's a popular name nowadays, but really the meaning is deceiver or liar. And God said, "No, I'm not letting you be called that anymore. I'm letting you be called Israel," which means divine. What a beautiful thing to go from deceiver to divine. And then we see Abraham. Abram just simply meant the high father. But God was saying, through your name, I'm fulfilling a promise that you're going to be the father of many nations. That's Abraham. Of course, we know Simon. Jesus said, "You're no longer Simon, listener. You're no longer Simon, but you are Peter," which means Petra, rock, the rock. And on this rock, I will build my church. Names have meaning. And yet, sometimes I think we don't pay too much attention. Everything in the Bible that is, many of these words that you see behind me, and these are just a fraction of the words used for God, is translated usually as God. And I think we miss a ton of the meaning when we just loosely translate it, call it God, call it good, and move on. And so I wanted to talk, and I thought this series could be a very powerful way of getting to know God a little bit better. The function of God on earth, not that God is just a function, certainly not. God has many things that God does, but as we see what God does that defines who God is, then we can know God better, and in that we can know us better, because we are created in the image of God. So today we're talking about two words derived from the word El, or Elohim. Both mean God, just the generic kind of word God, from Hebrew and Greek, and so from the Hebrew scriptures, the Christian scriptures, and other traditions all over, you'll see this word pop up over and over. It's kind of a generic word. It's used over 3,000 times in the Bible. It's used in Elohim, which is what we're going to first talk about, is the plural of that, which is really interesting. We could go into a whole other discussion on that. Some just say, of course it is, it's the Trinity, now move on. But I don't think we should ever just assume and move on, so maybe that's for a later discussion. Why the first time we hear of God is a plural form of God, Elohim, which simply means the great God, the great and mighty God. But I put it as God the Creator when we were reading and talking about it, because God, Elohim, in function, is creating. We see that there is a purpose of creation, literally translated might, God, which, but I think when the name God is used in the function of God, then we see God, not just mighty God, but God who is a mighty creator. So I want to talk about Genesis 1 alone has it 32 times, Elohim. Genesis 1 in the whole first creation story. Now, one of the issues with looking at God as, and it's not an issue in doing it, it's an issue in the way we have done it, is looking at God as a creator as we say, oh yes, we've read the creation story, whichever one you adhere to, the first or the second, there's two in Genesis 1 through 3. We read the creation story and then we say, oh, okay, so God was a creator. God created. That's what happened. That's past tense. And now that's not what God does anymore. We don't necessarily say that, but our logic infers it because we say God created and that's done. And now we live in the context of that creation. And it's so polarizing. Still to this day, you'll hear some people, creationists, who talk about, I believe in the creation story, and how dare you say the world is a couple million years old? It's 6,000 years old. We can back it up right back to Genesis 1. And then we hear scientists go, you can't be that stupid. Like, seriously, just look at the evidence. And it becomes so polarized that they don't even allow themselves to have a conversation. And in the midst of the polarization, we completely miss out on the fact that God is a creator. I don't take either of the creation stories literally. I think there is a ton to learn from them. I think that we can see what is God trying to teach us in the scripture here. But I don't believe, the first one, God's using words 7 days and we're done and it's good. And the second one, in a completely different order, God creates, not necessarily in the time frame. Sometimes God uses God's hands to form man. Man's alone, planted in the garden. Oh, we need Eve. That's a whole second one. Two totally different things. I think there's things to learn in both of them. But I think they're told very obviously in the way of legends. In fact, you can look up other traditions and see the exact same story told a different way. And it kind of looks like we stole it from them because they went over it. Just saying. But what I do see from it, and what I think I can learn from it, is that God is a creator. Because I don't believe it didn't happen that way because it couldn't happen that way, because God wasn't capable of it. I think God's capable of doing whatever God wants to do. But I think I can see through science and through study that God created in a fully different way. And I can appreciate that just the same. But what I think is more important is to realize that God is a continuing creator. Just like a painter paints, A musician makes music, a baker bakes, a creator creates. A creator did create. A creator creates. It wasn't just a 7-day thing and then God was done, but I think that that's important because that means God is still creating. God is still doing new things. Revelations 21:5 says, "Behold, I am making all things new." Why don't we take that at its word that God is still creating? If anyone is in Christ, they are a new creation. Not just a rebuild. A new creation. God is making things new. And why does it matter? I think it totally matters because I shake my head sometimes and think things are so out of control right now, there is no hope. But if my God is creating still, my God is creating newness still, my God is creating healing still, my God is creating ways out of the confusion still, then it matters. This week my heart was broken as I recognized decisions made from the highest office in our land that would result in the slaughter of hundreds and possibly even thousands of herds. My suspicion, and I know I'm not alone in this, is that the decision was made for money, not for humanity. And if I don't believe in a continually creating God, then I can't believe that God can renew even this. If I don't believe that God is doing all things new, then I can't believe that God has the ability to create cohesion and peace in a world that only knows warfare. But I believe God is a creator. Last night I read of another fatal shooting of a black body at the hands of a white police officer. I can't say her name. Tatiana Coquise Jefferson. 28-year-old woman was shot in her house through the window of her, I believe it was her back window in her bedroom, because a neighbor reported that the door was ajar. And so the police came to check it out. And the police saw a figure standing in the bedroom, which probably shouldn't be that abnormal from if you were in your bedroom, wondering what was going on outside. And he shot her through the window. And I think it's important to recognize that a lot of this stuff happens not because all police officers are bad, not because all black people are bad, not because individual police officers are always on the hunt, but a system is completely broken. And the system is perpetuated by racism. And so when someone in their biased mind sees a black body, then they respond in fear. And if I don't believe God to do a new thing in that, then what am I doing up here? If I don't believe God can recreate eyes and remake the way that we see each other, if I don't believe that God can make new creations of each and every one of us, and if I don't believe God can create a system that is based in love and not fear, perfect love casts away all fear, if I don't believe God can make that happen, why am I here? But I believe God can create harmony in the midst of diversity. And so I believe in Elohim, God the Creator. We see report after report that says we're too late. We've not even attempted to diminish our carbon footprint on this earth, and now the earth is destined for a fate that we cannot reverse. But I believe God is creating a new thing, and it doesn't give me permission to put my head in the sand and say, well, then it doesn't matter, God will make it right. But see, here's the thing, in all these things and in everything that I believe God can do something about, is God has invited us into co-creation. God has invited us to be the hands of God, the feet of God, the mouth of God, the ears of God that make all things new. That take responsibility for the systems that are broken and say, let's do something different. Because Elohim is plural. I believe we have been invited to work in the midst of God, the mighty Creator. So my eyes are constantly seeking, what has God done today? What new thing is God creating? What new thing is God calling me to create? And it goes so well with El Shaddai, the God of the mountains and the valleys, the God of the peaks and the depths, the God who then is the sustainer in the emptiness. Because I believe God is creating new things, and I believe God is sustaining us in the midst of that creation. When things need to be made anew, we are held. We are held in a place of love and peace as we seek the newness of those creations. It reminded me of a little boy's prayer. God, pray that you take care of my parents. They just need to know you're there. God, take care of my brother. Make him nicer, please. Take care of my sister. Oh, and for sure, keep my dog healthy. Take care of my dog. Oh, and by the way, God, I really need you to take care of you. Just come to think of it, if something would happen to you, we'd all be in a great big mess.
Amen.
But God is present. God is going to hold us and sustain us through the possibilities of chaos in the newness of creation. Elohim, El Shaddai, we are witness to these acts. And in it, we are called to respond. That is to worship. That is to revere, but that is also to say, God, what new thing are you doing in me? How do I need to hold up and sustain what is right and create anew what needs to be there? Let us be the hands and the feet of Elohim and El Shaddai. Amen.
Amen.